KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tediosian, 90.7 KFSR.
Welcome to another edition of the Central Valley Ledger. We're recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative, Fresno and Clovis. Today we're going to be talking about music and a new organization that's got music lovers excited. Our guests are the two Dons, as people refer to you as, Don Priest and Don Fischer. I've heard that before, right? People say that.
Yeah, the Dons.
The Dons.
Yeah.
So
Dos Dons.
or the Dos Dons.
Those
Yeah.
Dons, yeah.
So first let's talk to Don Priest. Tell us about yourself.
I'm about 5'9", 170 pounds, 73 years old.
Okay.
Been living in Fresno since 1990.
So I met you in 1999, almost 20 years ago, when you're still at KFSR. You have a show there.
I have a show there.
I met you at KFSR.
Right.
So what was your capacity with the radio station?
Wow. When I first came back to Fresno, I got involved with the radio station doing the show because I'd been doing radio on and off for a very long time in different areas. And I forget who invited who. Somebody asked me to come in and do a show, so I started doing a blues show. And that's where my association started. Then I was on the faculty at the Mass Communication and Journalism Department, now called the Media Communication and Journalism Department. And so I continued to play a role as a faculty advisor and became the general manager and all kinds of stuff. So I've been involved with KFSR for a very long time.
And been involved in music for a long time.
Been
it
involved
sounds
with music for a long time as well. Yes.
So let's talk to Don Fischer a little bit. Don, tell us about yourself.
5'10".
I love this height and weight thing. I'm 6 foot, and I'm not going to tell you how much I
I'm
weigh.
not
we
going to
don't
tell
talk
my
about
weight
weight.
either.
No, we don't talk about weight. No.
No. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, came to California in the military, U.S. Air Force, and moved my way around California, attended Cal Poly for a while, and then left San Luis Obispo for a radio job in Los Angeles at KNAC, and came up here into Fresno in 1980 to work at KKDJ.
So Fresno, this program airs on KFSR, and KFSR listeners might recognize both of you. Don, you have a show on KFSR. Tell us about that.
I have two shows, actually. I do a lounge show, as I call it, the Tiki Lounge Happy Hour, Fridays from 5 to 6, and then Saturday Playhouse, which precedes his show on Saturdays, noon to 2, which is kind of an eclectic mix of music.
And then we were talking off air. You also are affiliated with another radio station. You have another show. Boy, radio is all over your life these days. Tell us about that.
I work at Valley Public Radio Thursdays and Fridays. I do classical music on there, 9 to 4.
It is really good pronouncing those names, too.
Nice.
Yeah.
Don, you have a show.
He's got a little phonic dictionary, so it's all spelled out.
Actually, Google Translate helps a lot.
You have a show as well, Don
I do
Priest?
I do the Blue Buffet on Saturday afternoons from 2 to 5, and it's mostly we call it Dis, Dat, and Dutter because it's blues, but it's also a lot of other things as well.
I have a question, and I don't know which one of you can answer that question, but blues and jazz, how would you differentiate the two? And I'm not looking for a thesis on the styles, but do people get confused?
I would
with
say,
the two?
and I know people are going to go, yeah, that's not right. Jazz to me is a little more cerebral, whereas blues is more emotional.
That's good. I think blues is emotional. Jazz is, in some respects, linear, but there's improvisation involved in that.
Yeah.
And, it's the musician expressing themselves more through the music, whereas blues can be they express themselves a lot of times through the lyrics as well.
Do we have good musicians in Fresno? I'll let each of you take your shot at that. And I'm asking you a question because we'll talk about an event that we went to last that had some great musicians. But Fresno, do we have good musicians?
There's incredible musicians here. We both have been able to travel and go to different cities and kind of observe what the music culture is in various locations. And when you come back here and you go to just, a bar and hear a local band play, the musicianship is really, really high. I spent some time, I don't want to call out too many names of cities that I've been to where I was kind of disappointed. I went to some jam sessions in some pubs that were billed as, you got to come check out this, this scene here. And it's like, okay, but then come back to town and it doesn't matter what genre, really. I mean, the jazz musicians are incredible. The blues musicians are great. Fabulous country players, fabulous classical players. So I think it's a very high bar here in Fresno in terms of musicianship.
Don Fischer.
Well, I'm going to echo what he says, and the fact is, I think people don't get out enough to see the talent that is really in this area. There's just incredible talent, and I could reel off names of bands, and some people will recognize them, some not, and that's part of the problem is they don't get the exposure, because I tend to think sometimes people think of local music as kind of a notch below what's popular. Right. And in many cases, the musicianship is the equal of that.
Yeah. And I think part of that's the education of the musical education of the public, because what's on the radio doesn't necessarily represent the level of the caliber of the players that are in town. And what's on the radio is way overproduced.
And the reason I asked you that question is because recently I was at the Valley Music Hall of Fame's opening event. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the event that just happened.
Well, it's hard to do that without talking a little bit about the organization, which we made the joke at the event that it got started, 3 guys walk into a bar and wrote it down on a napkin, but it kind of happened like that. Patrick Contreras did a Facebook post.
And I want to stop you. Patrick Contreras is a very popular local musician. Mm-hmm. We've had him on this show before as well, and mm-hmm. he does a remarkable job, and he performed beautifully that mm-hmm. night.
Mm-hmm. So Patrick did a Facebook post saying, we've got an athletic Hall of Fame in Fresno. Why don't we have a music Hall of Fame? There's such great talent here, and there has been talent since the 40s, at least. And so Don and I had kind of tossed that idea around at one time or another, and after we saw the response Patrick was getting from that, we said, somebody's got to go ahead and do this. And that was the 3 guys walking into the bar. Yeah. Ray Settle was the third guy from Maximus Recording Studios. And that was a little over a year ago. And
now you're an organization, a 501c3.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're taking donations. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the process of forming this. I mean, it can't be just this easy overnight. Everybody agrees, everything is great. Congratulations.
No, it was not that way. Although, Don and Ray and myself, we kind of conceived of the concept, and then we reached out to Debbie Rude. She was our first contact because of her connections and her talent and her musical skill. And then that led us to John Alden, which led us to Fred Martinez, which led us to Rod Flores, and then Larry Gittins joined us, and then Janice Fleming joined us, and everybody
sounds like a domino effect.
Well, it was, yeah. It just kind of built as it went along, and everybody has their own perspective on music. Everybody has their own skill sets, and we met. We started meeting regularly. We kind of looked at other music Hall of Fames, particularly Buffalo, New York, because that's where Don's from, and we had a connection there. And then had to go through all the steps. We had to elect a board. We had to develop bylaws.
Not always the
We had to
easiest
go-
stuff to do.
Not the easiest stuff to do. No, we spent a lot of time
we
looking at bylaws. And, what does that say? Through the help of CMAC, we created the 501c3. So we kind of put all that infrastructure in place, and we met pretty much weekly for several months to get all this in place. And once we finally had that, then we decided that it was time to do the launch and let everybody know. But we wanted to make sure that they knew that this is a legitimate organization. It's not a popularity contest. There's a procedure for nominations. There's a vetting process, and it's a real deal.
So that's what I was going to ask you next, because as soon as word gets out that there's a Music Hall of Fame, I guarantee you people are going to raise their hand and say, "Oh,
No,
nominate me,"
I've
or
already heard that, yeah.
nudge somebody and say, "Hey, nominate me for this thing."
Well, he did a lot of the legwork on that. So why don't you?
Well, and we have to be very thankful to the Buffalo Music Hall of Fame, because they have been extremely helpful with the organization of a nomination process and a vetting process. They had all the things in place. They've been in existence there since 1983. And so a
Wow,
nomination...
they've been around for a while.
Yeah.
So a nomination can be made by anyone for someone, but you have to do the research. You can't just throw us a name. That's not going to work, because the people in Buffalo said their board does not do research.
So someone else does the research,
the
presents
person
it.
who nominates them does the research, provides, if there's hard copies of like LPs or whatever, media, cassettes, digital, they have to include that, background information, that sort of thing.
So who makes the decision then? I mean, it sounds easy to do, but when you start digging, it may be a little more complicated, because there are different genres and there are different styles. And you mentioned earlier, what's popular on radio may not be the worthy of a Hall of Fame designation. So then you get the name and the research, and then your board debates it.
The plan is that probably for the first induction ceremony that we do, which hopefully will be in about a year, that'll probably be mostly done by the board with a little bit of outside consulting. But the plan is that once all the nominations come in, we will then form an outside committee of local people, local musicians, local folks who are maybe educators. We haven't quite got that figured out yet. That's still part of the growing process. But then we would take all those nominations and then turn them over to that outside committee, and they'll be the ones to review everything and make recommendations.
And we'd like that group to be anonymous.
Yeah,
That's a great way of doing it. It's,
Right.
It sounds like, the county and the cities, they have a RFP process, and someone submits a bid, and that group that reviews RFPs, completely anonymous.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's no connection whatsoever, and they make their decision.
Right.
Sounds like you're on the right track.
because we don't
there.
want to be responsible for that, because that's favoritism and politics and all those crazy things happen, and that's not our role.
Yeah.
Our role is to keep it organized and keep it moving and make sure that it's inclusive.
So the sports, this reminds me a lot about the Sports Hall of Fame. When they do things, a lot of people are talking about it, but they've been around for a long time. Do you see yourself growing to be like the Sports Hall of Fame here?
I think absolutely we'd like to get there, but I think that's going to be, like it was for the Athletic Hall
Right.
of Fame, a long process.
It's going to take a while, yeah.
But do you envision one day like a dinner and, being that formal, or is this music a little more laid back? Or maybe you don't know the answer yet.
Well, I think the induction ceremonies we want to be, from the first one on, formal. Now, how big? That's another question, but I mean...
Yeah. Black tie, red carpet.
Yeah.
Really?
Because I think that's important.
Yeah.
that,
Because if you're going to honor somebody for their life's work, it should be classy. People have spent their entire life. The people that we think would be inducted have spent the better part of their lives working on this art, and that should be honored respectfully.
I want to ask about.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense. It does. I get it completely. And so when you induct somebody, is it a surprise if it's someone that a lot of people don't know? I mean, it's not a popularity contest, obviously.
Well, we just, in the event that we just did, right?
Yeah.
We did a little honoring of Dick Contino, renowned accordion player, known worldwide in his heyday. But we talked to a lot of people at the event who'd never heard of him before.
And I like that niche that you're doing because it's not like the Grammys or these big, award ceremonies where, you get the top three. You know who's going to win, right? It's the top
Yeah.
three that you hear everywhere. Fulton 55 is where the event was. Mm-hmm. How important is a place like Fulton 55 to music?
It's very important. There are so few of them in Fresno where musicians can go and get paid, probably a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
There should be more.
I think in terms of a venue here, it's probably, from a musician standpoint, if you get to play at Fulton 55, you're doing good. You're kind of like what the Wild Blue used to be, but it's not. But it's as close as we have right now.
So I was at a party recently, and we were sitting around the table, and someone brought up the fact that they could go to this outdoor concert up north somewhere and pay $30 to get in or whatever. And so they said, well, I can go locally to a concert and I'll pay almost the same amount. Why would I do that if I can go up north and get a bigger venue, more bands? What's your answer to a question like that? Because supporting local is huge for our community. Supporting local musicians is huge for our community. Are these musicians getting rich off of us going to watch them at like local venues?
No.
No.
Nobody's getting rich. That's why everybody has a day job. I can name you probably about 5 musicians in town who do this for a living. Everybody else is doing it for the love of it.
Even that, though, life could be busy. And the reason why I'm asking is we heard Patrick Contreras, again, I'll mention his name, at the event at Fulton 55, and he said he had a wedding, a quinceañera, and then he performed at that place. So back to back, it's not an easy life that some people
It's not.
think that it's this fame and rich.
There's a couple other guys and gals who do the same thing.
And Patrick, we can say we thought we had him for a full set when we began planning the event, and he agreed to it, and then he picked up a job at a wedding, which kind of made us shuffle things around, and we didn't know when he was going to get there, but it happens. They have to take those jobs.
And I imagine you as the organizer, a little disappointed, but you can't criticize the guy because he's trying to make a living.
You just got to flow. You go with the flow.
So some of the other bands that night did a wonderful job. Can you talk about some of the bands that performed? And there was a trumpet player who apparently was very, very popular that I didn't really know about.
There were 2 trumpet players.
The one that was the one that was from the popular band that was around a while back, Giddens.
Oh,
Well,
Larry Gittens.
Larry Gittens, who's one of our board members, was Stevie Wonder's music director for years.
And I want to interrupt you and I apologize for that and he's here in Fresno.
He lives in Clovis.
Yep.
So isn't that so interesting that we have just sprinkles of people in our community
Well,
that have
his wife's family is from around here, so that's why he's here. So he worked with Stevie Wonder for a long time, then went to Kool and the Gang.
Yes.
And he was with Kool and the Gang for a long time. Then when he finally said, I've had enough, he's got kids now, that happens. Being on the road wasn't as much fun. So now he's semi-retired and lives in Clovis.
We have people in our community that have done some wonderful things in music, right? Do you think that we underestimate the talent in this area when it comes to music.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
And so are you looking at trying to bring more recognition to the music industry?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to our local music,
Yeah.
to our local scene, yes, yes.
I think that's part, I think, of our purview, is to raise awareness of the music scene here in addition to honoring maybe people from the past and present in some cases.
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned about, if you go to a bigger venue and you pay $30 and you see some big names, right? People say, well, why do I want to spend that money local? You don't have to spend $30 to hear local music, because most of the places where they're playing, there's no cover. So you can go to a number of venues, and there's a bunch of them now that have music. They're restaurants, they're wine bars, they're little bistros here and there, and they have music on Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Gazebo Gardens is a great example. Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, they have music. It's free. It's a family environment. They have food trucks. They have a little beer garden. People bring their kids, their dogs. It's a great little event, and all the local bands play there.
Yeah.
It's all local music, and the caliber is excellent. You can go sample all kinds of music, and it changes. The genre changes. One night it's country, another night it's jazz. Lucy's Lounge is another one. They have music Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and a big jam session on Sunday. It's free. Let's go hear the music. Sequoia, both of them. The Tasting Room. I mean, I could go on. There's a bunch of them in town. They're not fancy. They're just
Places to go listen
places
to
to
music.
go listen to music. Yeah.
Well, and we're starting to see some festivals too, which
Yeah.
I think the Grizzly
Fest.
Yeah.
So a lot of
Fresh,
people
yes,
to live apart.
all that kind of stuff. And that's all supported by local musicians. So there's a wealth of musical talent around here. Now what's missing is that one club,
Yes.
that one really nice venue where you can go in. It's a nice, comfortable environment, nice sound system, good lighting. You can get some appetizers, date night for us older guys, bring your wife out, have a glass of wine, hear some music,
Yeah.
A classy place.
Seats about 500 people maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
And in other communities, there are such
Yes,
places,
Yes.
right?
there are, yeah.
But it sounds like we're getting there. Do you foresee that in the next 10 years, maybe someone will decide that's...
If there's somebody out there with a big checkbook who would like to, either help the Music Hall of Fame, or if you got make an investment on that kind of a venue, because it's not going to make money right away. Those kinds of things take a while to build up, but it really it's up to the public, it's up to the community who wants to step forward and really support it.
That's the kind of club where mid-level rising artists play.
Yeah.
So if you make it at this club, that means you're mid-level. And do you think that there are enough artists here to perform Friday and Saturday nights?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening.
There's a website called The Valley Musician. Okay, it's relatively new. Anna Rotondaro set it up, and she has a calendar every weekend, and she lists all the bands and all the places that they're playing. So if you go to The Valley Musician and look at their calendar, you can find out where everybody is.
I feel like there's a lot more interest slowly, happening in the music scene. I don't know if maybe I'm inquiring more about it, but do you two feel that way? Like there's, perfect example is downtown. Like you feel like there's something happening, and it may not be as fast as people like, but there's something happening. In the music scene and locally, is that the case?
Yes. I think music and arts both. I think they kind of go hand in hand almost, and there's been more exposure. I think with Art Hop, and then you get musicians playing at Art Hop, and people get to see musicians live that they might not have seen or heard before, and I think it just keeps building on itself.
Yeah.
It has to, I mean.
Yeah. Well, your camera guy, Paul, he's all plugged into the music scene. He's out there all the time.
I have to give a shout out. Yes, now that you mentioned Paul Starcevic, I don't know if I say his name right, but I always throw that accent in there, Starcevic.
Starcevic.
I don't know if it's right or wrong. He's never corrected me, but he's the director for today's program. And yeah, he's always filming music, and he's always out there following the pulse of music, and he seems busy doing it.
He's busy doing it. He did the show for us. He was out there all night.
All night.
Doing his thing, yeah.
Were you too happy with, we're running out of time this week in the program, but were you too happy with the turnout during the opening of the Valley Music Hall of Fame?
Absolutely.
And I'm laughing when I say that because I was checking you two out. I wasn't like stalking you or anything, but there was a couple of times where I was looking to see how you all are taking it all in, and I saw both of you doing the little dance, in place, and I thought, oh yeah, they're doing good. They're in a good mood.
The music all night was incredible. It was top of the line. Every act. The Tower Quartet, the kids who were playing classical music at the beginning of the show, they were fabulous. The Debbie Rood Band was over the top. Evo Bluestein did that solo accordion thing, the little Cajun stuff. That was great.
Yeah,
David House Trio.
The David House Trio, with the other trumpet player, Forrest Hamlick. Gary Newmark and Roy Carlson. Those guys were great.
Deidre Cantino.
She
was great.
Yeah. So the music was just.
It was a great mix of stuff.
It was a great mix of music.
It was a fabulous evening.
Yeah.
And tell us what's next. What can we expect next from the Valley Music Hall of Fame?
Well, we plan to be in the public eye as much as we can. We'll be posting on Facebook and our website and going around and giving out little handouts to tell people about us. We have some smaller concerts that are going to be in the works, but no big shows for a while, but little smaller things, at private houses or organizations, so that we can get the word out, feature, a local band, like we talked to Paul about the Folklore Society, doing a little something to recognize one of what they would consider to be an honoree. So those kinds of things.
Well, gentlemen, we're out of time this week on the program. It's always a pleasure talking to the two Dons. I met you two about 20 years ago, and I'm glad that we keep running into each other. So thank you for coming on the program, and keep up the great work.
Thank you for inviting us. Yeah.
That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. Thank you to our volunteer crew that made this production and every production possible. Paul Starcevic is our director for this show. Xavier Uarty is behind the scenes as the associate producer, making us look and sound good. Thank you to Don Fischer and Don Priest, our guests, talking about the Valley Music Hall of Fame. Hope you enjoyed the program this week, whether you were listening to KFSR 90.7 FM or the CMAC channels, Comcast 93 and AT&T 99. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.